Thanks, Paul. Thanks for that. And good afternoon if you're in North America. Good morning if you're in the UK or here in Australia. Thanks for making the time to listen to the White Rock story. Just give me a chance, so I will, hopefully people can now see. So you will find this presentation on our website, and I encourage you to have a look at that if you are after any more information. And of course, we have the required disclaimer, cautionary statement, and forward-looking statements contained within that I encourage you again to read, and easiest to read that on our website. So in short, what is White Rock? We are ASX listed, but we also, and importantly for the North American investor, have a cross-listing on the OTCQX. We are also in the process of applying for DTC eligibility, which would make it a lot easier for the investor to buy and trade White Rock shares in your time zone, in North America, in your currency. We have two projects, our exciting large Alaskan project called Red Mountain, which covers silver, zinc, gold, lead, and also a gold target in its own right. And here in Australia, Mount Carrington, which is an advanced gold and silver project. And thirdly, and I will touch on this in the presentation, we are in the process of merging with an ASX listed company called All Star Gold, which is a Victorian gold explorer and producer, and in the same state that the very well-known Fosterville gold mine, one of the world's richest gold mines, run by Kirkland Lake. So three assets. I'll touch on each of those in this presentation. A little bit more about our Alaskan asset. It's already got a JORC resource for those that understand that language. 9 million tonnes grading over 600 grams a tonne silver equivalent. So well endowed with silver, 50 odd million ounces, but also zinc, over 700,000 tonnes of zinc in that JORC resource. And that's just from two deposits, and there are many targets, and we're currently drilling there, and that's a lot of the topic for today. But we also have a large gold anomaly that we only announced and discovered last year, and that's also the topic of our exploration focus this year. 3 drill rigs turning as we speak. I'll touch on that. And then Mount Carrington, advanced on mining lease, feasibility study done, permitting to go. We're in joint venture with another ASX company where they progressed that project. So the White Rock shareholder remains exposed to that asset while we focus on both the All-Star acquisition that I mentioned, but also our work in Alaska. Some great financial metrics on that Mount Carrington project, and you can see that a payback just over a year and a fantastic rate of return once in production. So the people that are running the company that are managing these projects that are adding the value for White Rock shareholders. Peter Lester, quite well known, certainly very well known here in Australia. Been on quite a few boards, like myself, a mining engineer, but with different skill sets, more business development, M&A. I'm a little bit more probably a practical, traditional project development manager. Have been a CEO, been an MD before. Jeremy, based in London, great mining analyst, a lot of experience there, and well supported by Rowan Wallen, our exploration manager, who's worked both in North America and here in Australia. And importantly for White Rock, we have as our technical advisor, Dr. Quinton Hennig, which many people will probably have heard of, Novo Resources amongst many other companies. Very busy man based in Denver. He is appointed as our technical advisor. We talk regularly. He's been fantastic for White Rock, both at the geological level in giving us some of his experiences and thoughts, but also at the corporate level in terms of opening up the North American market for White Rock. And I'll touch on our corporate structure a little bit later in this presentation. So the Red Mountain asset, as I mentioned, it's over 800 square kilometres or over 300 square miles. A little bit of a dig at the geologists. They were very imaginative when they called it the Red Mountain Project. You can actually see it from Google Earth. So where are we? We are 100 kilometres due south of Fairbanks. Fairbanks is the second largest city in Alaska. So we're not in the mountains. We're not in the 10,000 foot hills of the Alaskan range. We are in the northern foothills, so sort of between 3,000 and 5,000 feet elevation. Half-hour chopper or single-engine Cessna due south from Fairbanks, or only half an hour due east of the main Parks Highway that links Anchorage, which is the largest city in Alaska, and Fairbanks. As I mentioned, we have a large land package. VMS is volcanogenic massive sulfide, so it's polymetallic, and hence we're well endowed in this JORC resource with silver, zinc, lead and gold, all in economically recoverable grades and amounts. It's an inferred resource, and so we are aiming to add to that inferred resource by more drilling, and we are doing that as we speak. Sits within a global resource, so a great head start. When we acquired it, it was only 15 square kilometres, currently out to over 800 square kilometres. No work had been done on it since the 1990s, so it offers white rock, great exploration opportunity, underexplored, no modern exploration, and Alaska is a fantastic jurisdiction to work in the top 5 of the Fraser Institute in the world, and anecdotal evidence supports that rating. We've had terrific support. So a bit of a photo of the team. Couldn't do it without the great team, run by guys based out of Fairbanks, and we've got, when we use a lot of the drillers and pad crews and cooks, etc., all from the Alaskan area. All chopper supported. The terrain is fairly hilly. Drill season, you can see a photo on the bottom left. Drill season normally is end of May through to sometime in September. We have drilled into October, but that was pushing it, as you can see. So fairly short season, and that's why we hit the ground hard. We give it a red hot crack, and as I mentioned, we're currently drilling with 3 rigs, and I'll touch on that right now. So the previous work, as I mentioned, was held by Grade Resources back in the 1990s, amongst others. And you can see some of the historical drilling. So some fantastic widths, some grades over 20% zinc, silver grades over 700 grams a tonne, even gold grades over 10 grams a tonne. So the great thing with the VMS polymetallic is that you do get these fantastic grades. It does pinch and swell. It can be quite wide, as you can see, but it can also be quite narrow. That's the nature of the geological beast. So this is our land package, 836 square kilometres. In the east, so to the right of the picture there, are the known VMS deposits. And we've currently got a drilling there as we speak on the Dry Creek deposit. We've actually also got a second drill rig there as we speak, drilling some of the more distant VMS deposits. So right now we have 2 rigs there. We intend to, depending on how the results go, to move one of those out to the west. Those red targets we only announced less than a year ago from work that we did only last year, never before drilled. So there's at least one target that we'd like to test there, depending on how we go during this year. And then thirdly, we've got a genuine target in its own right, Last Chance. This is a pure gold target. The beauty of the geology that we have is that we're blessed with these 2 geological domains. We've got the VMS polymetallic, but we've also got this intrusive related gold target called Last Chance. Again, we only announced that discovery in January last year. By July last year, we were drilling it. So in the space of 7 months, we went from nothing to drilling. I think that's a great testament to the guys that we've got on the ground in Alaska. And we did that during COVID period, which some of us are still suffering. But also it's a great testament to the approvals process in the state of Alaska. And as we speak, our 3rd drill is drilling there. So a little bit more about each of them. So Dry Creek, where our first drill is, again, very imaginative, Red Mountain on the right. That creek is dry, and that's the Dry Creek deposit. We did some drilling there in 2018. And you can see the widths, 3 to 5 metres wide, grades over 1,000 gram per tonne silver. So a fantastic deposit. We're back there as we speak, poking holes at depth. Why? The Dry Creek deposit only had drill holes down to about 200 metres. Excuse me. So we're now drilling at least 200 metres below that to try and double the depth. And that's work in progress as we speak. And that's just a diagram, a three-dimensional diagram of the existing deposits in the colours, and the yellow traces are our planned drill holes. Somewhere between 5 and 7 holes are planned, and as I mentioned, we've got a drill rig on that. We've got our first hole under our belt. It did hit about 1 metre of mineralisation, 200 metres down dip, and that core is off for assay as we speak. The assay labs are absolutely banked up, as you would expect in a Northern Hemisphere summer, and it will probably take at least 2 months probably to get those assay results back, and then they will keep coming through as we keep drilling. We've got more VMS targets than just Dry Creek. Geophysics is a great tool to help us identify where they might be. There are those two pictures in the top right there, where we've modelled the known deposits and the responses from the geophysics, and that helps us identify where future targets might be. And here's an example of one of them, and that's a planned hole that we intend to do. We started and we're going to go back onto that one. So never before drilled. It's based on the geophysics and some geochemistry and some mapping. We've also got VMS targets out to the west that I mentioned, and we hope to put the drill rig, depending on how we go, on at least that horseshoe deposit. We only announced this earlier this year, so we move pretty quickly. Guys on the ground do a great job to identify, assay, map, sample, geophysics, and then very nimble, we can put a drill on it relatively quickly. It's one of the great things about the approvals process in Alaska. And as I mentioned, we're blessed with this geological domain that we sit in, not only this VMS polymetallic, but also the gold potential. It sits in the Tatina Gold Belt, arches its way into the Yukon, and is host to some great gold deposits, including Pogo. Most people will have heard of Fort Knox, and Donlin, which is Barrick's Nova Gold's 45 million ounce project. We sit right in the heart of that. We announced this only last year, a 15 square kilometre, very large gold anomaly, supported by many, many samples. I'm a mining engineer. My comment is this gold has to have come from somewhere. Our trick is to find where it's come from. I would encourage the listener to go to our website. There are a couple of very good interviews given by Dr. Quinton Hennig on this in particular. He gives you a very good insight into why he likes this, the scale of it, the size of it, and the potential for it. We were lucky enough to go, as I mentioned, from discovering it to drilling it in 7 months last year. Those holes told us that we're probably at the top, we hope, of a high-grade system. That's the model, that's the theory. And so we're back there drilling as we speak, deeper holes. This is an example of one of them to see whether we can find the source of this gold. So supported by geophysics, geochem, and the rocks that we're sitting in. But there is more to White Rock than just Alaska. We're in the process of acquiring Austar Gold. It's a Victorian gold explorer and producer. Victoria is home to the Fosterville Gold Mine, one of the richest gold mines in the world, run by Kirkland Lake, that I hope many investors have heard of. Austar has 670 square kilometres of underexplored ground. It's on a mining lease. It has a gold processing plant, and you can see some of the, while narrow, some of the high grades that come with this acquisition. What for us, though, is the most exciting thing is the 670 square kilometre tenement package that follows these dike swarms. There are multiple historical gold mines mining well over 1/2 ounce a tonne. Morning Star itself produced 800,000 ounces at 26 grams a tonne. And that's that picture that I just showed you before. That's the Morning Star Gold Mine. So that's part of the acquisition. So we see fantastic exploration potential, year-round exploration, so it helps counter-cyclical news flow to Alaska, and also in Victoria, where White Rock is based. And I think in this COVID world, that's a very important part of a business strategy, is to make sure that, one, you've got assets that are in good jurisdictions, which White Rock is in Alaska and Australia, but also that you can manage and advance and add value for shareholders. And that's the other reason that we think this is a good acquisition for White Rock and its shareholders. And then thirdly, but not lastly, Mount Carrington. White Rock listed with Mount Carrington. It's an advanced gold and silver project. You can see the photo on the bottom left. You literally walk onto ore. JORC resource, JORC reserve. It's got a feasibility study, fantastic financial metrics, and we're in a joint venture with the ASX listed Thomson Resources to advance that, where they use their balance sheet to advance the approvals process. They also advance the pre-feasibility study through to DFS, all the while White Rock is free carried. We also do get some cash deposited into our bank account. And what's great about that is it allows the White Rock shareholder to remain exposed to this great asset. It allows White Rock to focus on our Alaskan asset, but also on the acquisition of the Ozstar asset. So they're the three prongs to the White Rock story. Corporate structure, fairly tight, under 100 million shares. Good cash on hand, that's currently funding our 10 million US program in Alaska, and a share price that's been fairly steady around the 50-cent mark. Great institutional and retail support. Our largest shareholder is Denver-based, Crescat Capital. We've got a great North American presence, you can see. Also European presence on our register, and also an Australian presence. So I think for a small junior, a great diversification of retail and institution. And I do encourage the investor that might be interested to go and have a look at who's put their money into White Rock. Do your own research. They've clearly done theirs. And I think that's a great indicator of what we see, and clearly I'm biased, about the potential for White Rock and its assets. So why would you invest? Again, not investment advice, but the Red Mountain polymetallic opportunities, currently 2 drills drilling VMS deposits as we speak. Last chance, very large gold anomaly there. Only had a few holes in it, never before been drilled until last year. We've got a drill turning there as we speak. Mount Carrington Gold and Silver project being advanced under joint venture. Proposed merger of a gold explorer and producer here in Victoria in Ozstar Gold. So 3 great legs to the White Rock story, in my opinion. And I think very importantly for the investor to look at the jurisdiction that the assets sit in. You can get great assets, but in strange parts of the world. I'm very happy to be in Alaska and Australia, both low risk jurisdictions, speak English, follow the rule of law. So look, with that, ladies and gentlemen, thanks very much. Hope you enjoyed that brief presentation. Encourage you to go onto the website. There is now an opportunity to ask some questions. And so with that, I will hand back to Paul.
Thanks, Matt. If you are interested in asking a question and are logged into the Zoom, you can submit your questions to us directly by chat. I will now start with the questions received prior to the webinar. Matt, if it is so limited for exploration, how does a miner eventually mine year-round, and how long is the drilling season?
So I'll take the second part first. So the drilling season, we got on the ground this year at the end of May, and that's about right. Waiting for the snow to melt and the weather to calm down because it's chopper supported. Wind in particular is an important component. So sort of end of May through to, we tell people, through to sometime in September. One of our seasons we had to stop in early September. One of our seasons we got through to the first week of October. So about 4 months, May through to September. So all of June, July, August, September. So yeah, about 4 months. So to the first part of the question, look, you can work open pit and underground anywhere in the world. I did some time at Yellowknife in the Northwest Territories, which is further north than this project. The average January temperature was -35. Across the Great Slave Lake there was Pine Point, which was open pit. So that works in that sort of temperature. And I was at the Con Mine, which was an underground gold mine. We believe that with Dry Creek and WTF deposits at this stage, they will be underground, which makes it easier to work in that sort of climate, but you can certainly work open pit as well. And in fact, the world's largest zinc mine is in Alaska at Red Dog, which is above the Arctic Circle. So you can mine irrespective of what latitude in the world you're at.
Thank you. Once a resource is defined in Alaska, what is the next step? Build a mine or sell it to a large mining company?
So that's a good question. So our challenge, which is a great challenge to have, is we don't know how big this project could be. We've already got 2 deposits. We've got multiple other targets to drill. So we want to get, first step is a sense of the size of the prize. Then when we think we've got a reasonable critical mass of tonnes and grade and metal in the ground, you would do some preliminary economic assessments or scoping studies, as we would call it. You would probably at that stage commence your environmental baseline studies and then work your way through up to the options that are then before you, is to keep doing it yourself, or we would maybe look for a joint venture partner, a larger company, or someone may want to acquire it off us, or we may want to put it into its own vehicle. So look, White Rock and our strategy is we're very open to how to advance this project, whether it's ourselves, whether it's with joint venture, or whether it's outright. So we keep our options open.
And next question, when should we expect drill results in Alaska?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So the assay labs are absolutely chocker, backlogged. That was the same last year. I think there's 2 parts to why it's taking so long. I think COVID and available protocols and available labour is impacting, but also Northern Hemisphere summer, everyone is out there. Drills have been hard to get. Even harder to get have been drillers to keep those drills turning, and the same impact then with the assay labs. At this stage, we're seeing turnaround times of upwards and over 2 months. So it will take some time for the assays to go through the laboratory. Patience is required, I would say 2 months.
So we are getting some messages here in the chat, and we really appreciate that, and I'll get right onto them. Is the new staking claims in Alaska southeast of the property due to new discoveries?
So the announcement that we put out yesterday, staking the extra 30 odd square kilometres, is immediately south of the known VMS deposits. And in fact, the new ground picks up one of the recently identified VMS targets that we are now, as we speak, building a pad to put a drill on within this week.
Second question, when White Rock started the joint venture for Mount Carrington, it was advised the JV was complete so White Rock could focus on the Alaskan asset. However, a few months later, White Rock proposed a merger, noting that White Rock needed an asset in Australia for news flow. This seemed to be a mixed message. Why didn't White Rock focus on Mount Carrington as the Australian asset rather than trying to purchase another asset?
So part of it's strategy, and probably don't have long enough. Strategy is always a discussion at a board level. We have that every board meeting. I guess the history of Mount Carrington is important in answering that. White Rock was listed 10 years ago. White Rock listed with the Mount Carrington asset. So White Rock's had it for 10 years. And for a number of years, the investment community and shareholders weren't really supporting White Rock and its desire to advance Mount Carrington. It is true to say that White Rock struggled to raise money to advance it through the approvals process. It is fair to say, though, that many investors don't find tipping money or investing in a company that's doing approvals as a particularly exciting story. And so White Rock struggled to find the funding to advance it. So when ASX listed Thomson Resources came along and said, we'd like to fund that because it helps us, i.e. Thomson Resources, it helps them to unlock their other assets in that area, that was a win-win. Thomson Resources needed something like Mount Carrington to give them critical mass. so that they could also use that facility for their other assets. And for White Rock, it was a solution to advancing it because White Rock couldn't fund it in its own right. So on that scenario, joint venturing Mount Carrington, having Alaska, it did then leave the opportunity for White Rock to acquire and grow. Now, we won't grow for the sake of it, but it gave us the opportunity to look elsewhere for a 100% owned asset, and Austar Gold was a standout example of that opportunity.
Thank you, Matt. How do you think the Dry Creek resource could grow this season, or how large do you think it could grow?
So look, that's a very good question. It clearly depends on the drill hole results. But given that the deepest holes were about 200 metres from surface, and we're doubling that to 400 metres from surface, one would like to think if we get similar sorts of drill hole results to the historical drill hole results, that we could at least double that. That would be a wonderful outcome. It could still be open further at depth, even deeper than that. So we're very interested to see what this first lot of 3 to 5 holes will tell us, but not unreasonable with success, drill hole success, no guarantee, but drill hole success, to maybe at least double that.
And unless anyone has any other questions, we're going to take the last question. Please give us some color on your outstanding debt.
So that's a good question. White Rock is debt-free. We have a really clean balance sheet. As at the end of March, we had about $10 million Australian in the bank. Not long after that, we raised another $8 million, which gave us a great cash position to be able to fund this current project. It's all out of capital raising. So yeah, we don't have any debt at all. No borrowings, no convertible notes out there.
Someone submitted a question. Sorry about that. Would doubling of the resources already be close to a critical mine mass?
So that is a really good question. So we've done some in-house work, so not able to be publicly released because it doesn't comply either with the ASX, the JORC code, or the Canadian 43101. But we think we're already halfway there with the current resource. So if we are able to double the current tonnage at about the same grade, we believe we've got the critical mass needed. We don't think we will get a doubling of the 9 million tonnes just from Dry Creek. We've also got WTF, but we've also got these many other targets, and that's the reason that we're drilling some of these other targets, is to try and add a third deposit or even a fourth deposit to the existing two. We think that's the best pathway to doubling the resource. So we're already halfway there is our internal view of the asset and the size of it.
Well, unless anyone has any other questions, thank you, Matt, and thank everyone for joining today's webinar. Again, today's webinar recording will soon be made available on the White Rock website. Again, whiterockminerals.com.au. If you have any other additional questions that have not been addressed on this webinar, please feel free to email us at whiterock@rbmilestone.com. Again, that's whiterock@rbmilestone.com. Thanks again. You're now free to disconnect.